It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and before we jump into the date today, I just want to say happy Thanksgiving to all of you. This is coming out on Thanksgiving, 2023, November 23rd, 2023, or when this gets posted, it'll be the 24th of November, but hope you had a good Thanksgiving. But today, moving on from that, of course, we are moving to back in time to March 10th, 2000, to take a look at three films, and let's just get right to it. Let's start off with the biggest new release of the weekend, and that is Mission to Mars.
Truly anomalous formation. It's unlike anything that we've seen so far. We're trying not to go too nuts up here, but we think there's a good chance that this could be water. Of course, if that's correct, then we may have found the key to permanent human colonization.
Yes. Okay, we're ready to light this candle. Let's go to Mars.
What the hell is that?
No idea, boss.
Heard of abandoned ship. For centuries, we've searched for the origin of life on Earth. We've been looking on the wrong planet.
So let's start off with some of the most interesting things about this movie. Specifically, this is actually based on a Disney theme park attraction. Everyone thinks that Pirates of the Caribbean was their first attempt to try to bring a theme park attraction to the big screen, but no. This is actually based off of the Rocket to the Moon ride from Disneyland that came out when the park opened in 1955, and then Flight to the Moon, which opened in 1971. And Mission to Mars was an attraction in Tomorrowland, in both Disneyland and the Magic Kingdom. And supposedly, this is what this movie is based off of. You have a story here that has the first crewed Mars exploration mission going awry. You have Jim McConnell, played by Gary Sinise, helping to coordinate a rescue mission for a colleague. And other characters in here include Tim Robbins, Don Cheadle, Connie Nielsen, Jerry O'Connell, Kim Delaney. It's directed by Brian De Palma. A lot of good elements to it, but man, this is really pretentious. This is Disney trying to do their best attempt to try to copy 2001: A Space Odyssey and make it their own, and didn't work. It did not work. The visuals look pretty good, but this was the first of also many, many movies that took place in space or in Mars. We had stuff like Space Cowboys that came out later in the year, which was seen with much better success. Red Planet, which was not a big success. Then we had Ghost of Mars the next summer, which was one of the worst John Carpenter movies ever made. But this, visually, it looks great, but everything else, it just feels like it felt like they were trying to rip off 2001: A Space Odyssey, and they didn't even try to hide it. They even had a computer that I swear was trying to be too much like HAL 9000. I mean, it was ridiculous how much this movie tries to copy what 2001: A Space Odyssey did so well. That movie was visually gorgeous, and it was very interesting to watch for a number of different reasons, mostly because it was a very experimental film that still holds up after all these years. This thing pretty much just has the same problems with most sci-fi movies nowadays, especially original sci-fi films they fail too hard to make their own source material out of something here, and just end up really copying what had already worked in the past. And Yeah, the movie just doesn't work. It's got a great cast overall, some really cool visuals overall, but the story is just too much. It gets too pretentious, and like I said, it's trying way too hard to be the next 2001: A Space Odyssey, and it fails on so many different levels. And yeah, it's not a good film. So avoid this one like the plague. Such a disappointment on so many different levels. But that's Mission to Mars. And here's some more disappointment for you. It's a new Roman Polanski film with Johnny Depp, and it's The Ninth Gate.
Engaged in the Kingdom of Shadows, reputed to conjure up the Prince of Darkness in person. I want you to get it for me. You mean the devil won't show up?
I alone have fathomed the Master's grand design. I alone am worthy to enjoy the fruits of that discovery.
The Ninth Gate. Rated R. Starts Friday.
Speaking of movies that try to copy other films from the 1960s, here's one where Polanski's basically just ripping off his own works. I mean, this is a film that's literally being compared to Rosemary's Baby, and not in a good way. You have a story here where Johnny Depp is a dealer of rare books who is tasked to authenticate a 17th century book that purposely contains a magical secret for summoning the devil. And it gets as pretentious and as boring and as lifeless as you can get. And it's not a good movie. It is not a very good movie. It has too many good talents involved in it. Johnny Depp, Lena Olin, Frank Langella. Roman Polanski can be a really good director, but this just feels like a film where he was getting too... It has a lot of the same problems Mission to Mars does. Has some good visuals to it. It's very stylistic at times, and the atmosphere can be very good for a film like this, but it just fails to really get a grasp of what the kind of story they want to tell here. And it even tries to rip off the studio's own The Blair Witch Project, which was the big hit of the previous summer. This is the same company that put that out, and you could tell they were trying way too hard to copy that success as well. So it's not just ripping off Rosemary's Baby. You're ripping off something that just came out 9 months ago, and it's just a mess of a film, and it just doesn't work. I mean, this is a film where everybody in here has done so much better works, and this is just a disconjointed mess of a film on so many levels. I'm trying to create my own words here. Misconjoinated. No, it's a disconjointed film all around. Just another one you should avoid like crazy. And, yeah, avoid this one. So that's The Ninth Gate. On to our last film, and that is a film that actually came out last week in wider release, and had been out for a couple weeks prior to this, but I just noticed it in the last episode, so let's talk about My Dog Skip.
Town has a secret,
No one's buried in here, don't you? Hey, what is that dog?
but they've got a secret weapon
Go get him, boy.
named Skip. Get that kid. Together, they're solving the mystery of a lifetime.
Spread out.
Coming only to theaters from Warner Brothers Family Entertainment. Look at that dog. My Dog Skip. Rated PG. Starts Friday, March 3rd at a theater near you.
So My Dog Skip is based off of a 1995 autobiographical book of the same name by the writer of this, Willie Morris, and it tells the story of a 9-year-old Willie Morris, played here by Frankie Muniz, which we'll get to him in just a second, as he's given a smooth fox terrier who is also famous if you've seen classic television in the 90s, but we'll again get to that later, for his birthday, and how the dog fundamentally changes several aspects of his life. Now, Frankie Muniz is, of course, Malcolm from Malcolm in the Middle, but Malcolm in the Middle only premiered 2 months prior to this movie coming out, so he was still relatively new to a lot of people. So the fact that he was the star of this film before this, just 2 months after Malcolm in the Middle premiered, that's something. But the dog in here you might be familiar with. He is actually Eddie on Frasier. But there's 2 dogs that play him in this movie. 3 dogs, actually. One is a puppy, played by Sweetie. But Enzo is Skip in this movie as a middle-aged dog, a grown-up to Skip. But Enzo was also Eddie on Frasier in the early years of, I believe the early years, or maybe the... I'm trying to see when he became Eddie on Frasier. I think it was... No, okay, I see it here now. Moose is also in the movie as an older Skip. Moose was actually the original Eddie, but then when Moose died, I think Moose died in 2000... I guess he maybe was around on here. It's confusing because you don't really know when he's actually on here. But Moose and Eddie both are Eddie. I'm getting confused here. Moose and Enzo are both Eddie on Frasier. Eddie was originally played by Enzo's father, Moose. Enzo was one of a few puppies bred specifically as possible replacements for Moose, and it became clear that Frasier was a hit in the long run, so he eventually became Eddie later on down the road, even though both Moose and Enzo died after the series ended. Moose died in 2006, Enzo died in 2010. On top of that, you have Diane Lane, Luke Wilson, Kevin Bacon, Caitlin Walks, who was in a number of different shows back then. Harry Connick Jr. is also in here playing an adult version of Willie. Clint Howard. I'm getting names confused on this one here, but I remember seeing this movie in theaters too. I mean, I saw this on the big screen. It was one of those films that I didn't really know who Frankie Muniz was, so I didn't watch Malcolm in the Middle up to that point, but I thought Frankie Muniz was a pretty good actor in this movie, and then later on down the road, I found out he was Malcolm too. And I mean, he was a very good actor around this time period. I mean, they were setting him up to be the next big thing, but he never really took off. He still is working nowadays, but not as much as he did back around here. And he's really good in the film. Most of the casting in this movie is very good. It is a very solid film overall. It's a nice film, very harmless, and it tells a really good story. And you really do buy into the relationship between the boy and the dog in here. It's a really well-made film on so many different levels, and yeah, at times it can be a little bit of a heartbreaker. It's not Marley and Me levels of it's not Marley and Me levels of depressing. Like, of course, we know how that story ends. I mean, but there are times when you do get a little bit choked up at times because you really do buy into the relationship of the boy and this dog. And when stuff that happens in here that's not very good, I mean, it's very, very hard to really keep your emotions together, because nobody wants to see an animal get knocked off in this. They don't really show the dog dying, but at the same time, he does get injured in several different parts of the movie, and that's just the great thing about having the two dogs from Frasier on here playing the dog in here, because it's a really good dog actor. It's a really damn good dog actors that they have for this film, and yeah, it's just a really solid film overall. This is directed by Jay Russell, who has done a couple of other decent films around this time. He did Ladder 49, which is a very underrated John Travolta, Joaquin Phoenix firefighter film. And he also did The Water Horse, The Legend of the Deep, which is another kind of an underrated film. So is Tuck Everlasting. He's a solid director overall. And this was kind of his first film after a long break from his first film in 87. I mean, it took him 13 years to get into the film, and got a chance to show it off here, and he does show that he is a decent director, and the film overall is very well done. It's a well-made film, not a classic by any means necessary, but more than enough to say it's definitely worth the watch, and definitely worth checking out. Definitely check it out, My Dog Skip. And so on that note, we wrap up another edition of Time About the Movies. We'll have two movies next time. One of Steven Soderbergh's two big movies in 2000, Aaron Brockovich with Julia Roberts, and also the first film of the Final Destination series, simply titled Final Destination. We'll take a look at those two movies next time, but until then, thank you very much for watching, and if you want to see more videos like this, please hit the playlist on the next page, check out the previous episode, and also don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button if you want to see more videos like this on this channel. So with that said, I am off. I will see you guys next time, and until then, as always, take care.